Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Today we are going to talk about adjectives and how to decline them. That means how to change their endings according to different factors. This is honestly one of the hardest but most important topics in German grammar. And learners hate it. But you need to understand the basic rules from the beginning. Today is going to be a lot easier than the last lesson, where we talked about the adjectives in combination with the indefinite article. Today we are going to do the definite article, and it's a lot easier because we have less endings and less confusion. Adjective declension, how we call it in German, means how do we have to change the ending of the adjective depending on 4 different factors. So we need to find out, is it an indefinite or definite article? Which gender do we have? Is it one or several objects? And which case is involved? As you know, we have these 4 cases in the German language, of which you already know 3, and all 3 come into play today. We have to change the adjective whenever we put it in between the article and the noun, or in front of the noun if we don't have an article, but we don't need it in the following case. Die Sonne ist gelb. We don't have to change anything here, but if we put our adjective gelb in between the article and the noun, die gelbe Sonne, you see we have to add an E. And so we need to find out which ending for which gender case and so on. So today we are going to use the definite article, so der, die, das. So we don't need to think about our first aspect, article, it's the definite article. Let's look at some sentences to see if we can identify gender, case and number. Remember, we use the definite article if we talk about something specific. So not something random, a specific object you point at or you just refer to. Das ist der große Ball. So we have the noun Ball, and it's der Ball, so we know it's male. So we know our gender is male. It's one ball, so we also know the number. And the verb sein is always followed by the nominative case, so we also know our case. So you see, we have to add an E to the adjective groß. So let's take a look at a neutral word. Das ist das große Haus. So das Haus is neutral. We have one house, our number is 1. And it's once again nominative. And we also have to add an E. Das ist die neue Schule. So this is now the female version. Number is 1 and case is once again nominative. So you see we have to add E for all 3 genders in the nominative case. So that's pretty easy. So now let's take a look at the accusative examples. Ich suche den Ball. So you remember, it's der Ball in the nominative, but because of the verb suchen, which is always followed by the accusative, we have to change the article. If you don't know these rules, please check out my video about the accusative. So you see we have a different ending here. We have to add en. Now let's look at a neutral word. Ich suche das kleine Kind. So you can see we have the ending only e, the same ending we had in the nominative case. And let's conclude with a female article. Ich suche die große Katze. So once again we only have to add an e. So the male article was our exception here. We have to add en. Now let's look at some dative examples. Ich helfe dem jungen Mann. The verb helfen is always followed by the dative. And you see we have to add once again en, the same ending we used in the accusative. Now let's look at a neutral example. Ich helfe dem kleinen Kind. So you see here in the dative, we also have to add en for the neutral article. And let's look at the female example. Ich helfe der alten Frau. So once again en, and you can see for all the endings in this dative category, whether neutral male or female, we have to use en. So you can take a look once again at the chart, and you can see we only have two endings, e and en. The nominative, all genders are with e, in the dative en, and only in the accusative you have to pay attention to the male version. So we haven't talked about the plural yet, but that's for a simple reason. We only have one ending. That's great. So we only use the ending en. For the definite article, we don't have a negative article. We can only use the indefinite article. Kein. So we don't have to go through all the genders and cases, but I give you a few examples. Das sind die neuen Bälle. Ich suche die großen Bälle. Ich helfe den kleinen Kindern. You see, it's not about the ending. It's always en, but of course you have to pay attention to the article. You see in the last sentence we have the dative case and you need to change the article. We do have some small words such as diese, welche, alle, jede, or solche. These are treated just as definite articles, so you use the same declension. So, as I've promised, it's pretty simple compared to the indefinite article. But the difficulty for most learners is not the correct ending for the definite article, but to remember the difference. Look, we have to say ein großes Haus, but das große Haus. So we have different endings for the indefinite and definite article, and it's hard to memorize the difference between those two. So it's a common error to say das großes Haus oder ein großes Haus. But that's wrong. So it's a major source of error to confuse the endings for the indefinite article and the definite article. So it's really important you remember the correct endings for both the indefinite and the definite article because they are different. We'll do a little exercise now together. You'll have to add the endings to the adjectives, and please try to think of these four factors: article, gender, number and case. You can of course look at the chart, which I'll put on the screen at the beginning of the exercise. So we are done now with the adjectives, and we have mastered one of the most difficult topics together. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new here and like my videos, please consider subscribing. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much and see you in the next one.